now take it away.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much. This is a session I present very often and with very much joy, and I like to tell the story. It's based on a series of talks I created, which I called Experience Bundesliga, where I would like to show what kind of things do we in the Bundesliga within also the technology partnership with AWS. And in detail today, what I would like to show you is how we are able to send such things like goal notifications to a lot of fans, to hundreds of thousands of fans on a match day and even in real time. And I will guide you through this. I will tell you a bit about what we do, what the Bundesliga is, what the company behind the Bundesliga makes. But let me first start a bit to tell you something about myself. This is the moment actually where my kids are very proud of, because they designed this emoji for me. And they also said I should, every time I show this, I should tell them that they were involved and did this. So these are applause to my kids. I'm working at the DFL Digital Sports in Germany. I'm based in Cologne, and I'm a solutions architect in my current role, but I'm a developer by heart. I have more than 10 years of practices in separate kind of engineer roles. And I also love to still code and do the things and being in the engine room for some things, building proof of concept. But the focus of my work shifted a bit now to be more on the solution architect's role. I have several tenets in my life that shape my life actually. So I'm from Cologne, and if you know Germany and Cologne in particular, this is the most exciting time of the year for us, because we have Carnival, and for us it's called Carnival, not Fasching, which is called in the more southern regions of Germany. I prefer my local beer, which is called Kölsch. This comes from Cologne, and I prefer this before the beer from our rival city, Düsseldorf. And if you look into my IDE, you will find spaces and on tabs. And I truly believe that cloud is the way to go for the future, and that on-premise data centers are a relic of the past. And what's most important for me is that my family is the most important part besides everything else, and especially before things like work. I have 2 kids. I live here in Cologne with my wife, and yeah, we enjoy the life in all fashions. As I said, I'm working for a company called DFL Digital Sports, and as you are located in Boston and Chicago, it's likely that you never heard of us. But the company behind the Professional Soccer League and the company that is responsible for marketing and organizing the competition is called the DFL, or the Deutsche Fußballliga. And the DFL consists of several subsidiaries, which are all responsible for certain aspects in the media creation value chain. And what is kind of unique for us in comparing to other European leagues or other football leagues in general is that we cover the whole media value creation in-house. So we have the DFL as its own company, which is responsible for organizing and taking care of that football matches can be played in Germany for the first and second Bundesliga, so the first 2 professional leagues here in our country. We have the Sportech Solutions company, which is responsible for all things related sports data. We'll hear a lot of about the Sportech Solutions in a minute, because it's very important for the thing I will tell you today and I will share. We have the Sportcast. So if you have the opportunity to watch a Bundesliga match, the signal that you receive also in the United States is likely to be produced by the Sportcast itself. So these are the guys that sit with the camera in the stadiums and have all the capabilities and skills to produce very high level video footage across the globe. The company I'm sitting in and I'm working for is the DFL Digital Sports. We are responsible for all kind of digital content, enhancing and extending the media value chain. So we're responsible for digital products like the Bundesliga website, for the official Bundesliga app, but also for the Fantasy Manager game that we provide to our fans as an additional value and additional product in the world of Bundesliga products. And last but not least, we have Bundesliga International, which is basically our sales unit responsible for selling licenses to media partners, to other partners, and doing those partnership agreements and so on. So they bring the money in, if you will. What I would like to do today is to travel a bit back in time with you. And while we do this, I will explain or try to explain the importance of push notifications or notifications for our business and also for sports app maybe in general. And we will travel back in time to match day 32 of the season 2020-2021. And this was kind of a special match day because on this day, the decision has been made who has won the championship in this year. So if you follow the Bundesliga and the German Professional League, you will say, okay, this is boring. It is Bayern Munich, and it was Bayern Munich the last 10 times. Yes, you're right. But the interesting part here today is not that who won the championship, but how this championship was actually defined in the end. The biggest competitor during this time was RB Leipzig. It's the club here on the upper right corner. They had a match against Borussia Dortmund and they lost. And this basically was signed that Bayern Munich was the champion of this year. And a typical situation on this match day is something you see here on the screen. So it's sitting some people in the bar watching the match, and there's this smart guy here, which holds on his scarf, that has our official Bundesliga app on his mobile phone. So in his initial onboarding journey, when he first starts it, he's getting asked if he generally wants to receive push notifications about important events in the match, about certain news, about the Bundesliga, about his favorite club. Of course, he does this because otherwise the story would have a very early end. And in this onboarding process, he's also getting asked what's his favorite club. So he is FC Bayern Munich fan since childhood, and of course he says, yes, I want to follow this club. By setting this, he implicitly receives all notifications, all things related to his favorite club. On this special match day, he also decided to break out of his usual fan behavior. So he decided to subscribe to an individual match in addition to his followed favorite club that is not related to his home club. But he knows when he looks on the table on this day or before the match day, he knows that the end result of this game, Dortmund against Leipzig, will have a huge impact whether Bayern Munich will be announced as the champion of the season or not. So he individually subscribes to this match to also get the updates on what's happening in this competition, in this match. Let's jump a bit forward in time. So imagine 90 minutes in Munich are already played and the referee there made his final whistle. And the additional time in the other match in Dortmund is almost over. So this is the moment full of tension and emotions. So this is typically the moment, if you look years in the past, where people sit in the stadium with a radio on its ear and try to capture all the things that are happening in their city. So they want to be the first that knows, okay, did they win, did they lose, what's the impact for our team? And I think independent of the sports you like or what kind of favorite sports you watch, you can imagine what happens when you receive this notification first, and you are the first that recognize, okay, my home club now has the trophy in its hand and we can celebrate. So this moment is basically reveals all these emotions. It's the moment where people sit in the stadium and throw their beer and their bratwurst in the air, where people hug each other that never know before. It's really a very emotional situation, and for us this is exactly what we would like to transport. It's not just a push notification, it's the transporting emotions and giving fans, releasing those emotions in the hearts of our fans. And therefore, push notifications are a very important engagement channel. But what's happening actually behind the scenes? So I would like to tell you a bit on and release the curtain a bit on what's happening behind all the things that you see on the pitch, behind all the players running there, shooting goals, and enjoying the game. So the question is always, how quickly does a player run? How many kilometers does the team cover as a whole? Is the defense moving as it should? And the answer to these questions are all provided by the official match data. And here the Sportec solution company comes into play, which is responsible for all the things, capturing and collecting all the data in real time. And we've been collecting this since 2011. And Sportec solution is responsible for exactly this, which gives clubs, fans, and media broadcasters all these official match data, every movement of the ball, every step taken by the players on every single match situation. And this works basically by, on the one hand, by using positional data. We have between 16 and 20 cameras that are positioned in different locations around the stadium to follow and to track basically all 22 players and the ball. And then a software package in these cameras converts all the images into data points. And when a player sprints from the edge of the box to the center circle, the program records the player's location nearly 25 times per second and calculates their speed. And this is basically known as the so-called positional data. All these information are then collected. It can be accessed by professional clubs, by an online platform, and also much of it even in real time during a match. So we developed this tool, we as DFL, and match analysts appointed by the clubs use this to evaluate their own tactics and decipher those from their opponents, so they can see whether their player performance data meets the expectations or not. So this basically the questions during a match: is a winger making as many sprints as usual? Is the team as a whole running less than it normally should does? And is the defensive line holding the right line, and so on. So this is basically what's happening with the positional data. And during and every match day, we as Bundesliga, Bundesliga 2 and the Sportec Solutions processes those data we collect and make it also available to the clubs. And this allows to identify also key figures in the game for every one of the 36 professional clubs when it comes to ball possession, distances covered, numbers of sprints made, and so on. And the clubs can use this as a whole host of other data in their match analysis and scouting departments, as well as in their everyday training work on tactics and athletic skills. And this is basically the one pillar of sports data we collect. The other pillar is the so-called event data that we also collect. So in addition to those positional data. So this refers to things like tackles, fouls, crosses, and of course, the most important part of the game, the goals. And when, for example, a player successfully completes a pass to the teammate, this is also then classified as an event. And usually we record more than 1,600 events during a single match. The funny thing, and that was very surprising for me when I started at the DFL, was that every match we have DFL staff members, 4 in total, that are working to collecting and cataloging all these data during a match. So there are the so-called speaker. This is one role, one of the 4 people here, that uses a code language to describe the live match directly from the stadium, which enables another person, the writer, who's based in a collection center in a facility and connected directly to the speaker. to enter these events into a Sportec solution system in real time. So this ensures that these actions can then be also checked very precisely and nothing is missed. And two operators in this collection center compare the events that have been entered against also various pieces of live video footage. This gives then our data the seal of the official match data and verified data in the end, so that they have something like a seal of approval. This is basically the whole magic that happens when we enjoy football matches and how all those data gets. Maybe, oh, I revealed the answer. Sorry for clicking that fast. I don't know if this works actually in the webinar, but the question is always, or we get always asked, how many data points do we process per match? And this is a huge number because you can imagine all those player movements and things that happen. It's over 3.6 million data points we collect per match as positional data. And in addition to this, also the event data on top, so goals, tackles, fouls, and so on. Push notifications, as I said, and the things that are happening during a match is the main driver of engagement. And push notifications is a very important engagement channel for this. The biggest challenge for us is to extend the so-called match day experience between match days. So it's easy to go with the stories that the match describes. So it's when your home club scores the final goal to the victory, there's nothing more to add. Or if in a derby your rival team loses or your own team wins. So we don't have to extend storytelling here basically. But what we can do, or one of our focus points is to really extend the match day experience, especially in the time between match days. So what we see is a typically wave of engagement. The engagement is very high on a match day and it drops usually after a match day. So for us, a key challenge is how to lift this engagement rates, especially between the things. And this has multiple perspectives. We use some pre-match engagement before the match to really prepare our fans for the upcoming big match. We have then during the match, the so-called match events and also match recaps sometimes. And at the post engagement, we try to provide additional values by sending out digital highlight clips, for example, to really give some kind of recaps or the best fan moments once the match day is over. What's happening on the technical side is relatively straightforward, actually. So from the Sportec solutions, we get all this data, and we have some kind of a serverless system that is here described as the match data processing that processes all these data and writes it into Google Firebase. That's our product we use for our live ticker and for the real-time updates when you have an active connection and the application actively open, so that you don't have to constantly reload or have some kind of polling implemented. It's basically a WebSocket connection bidirectional that we are able to push also this information to the devices and re-render the screens. And we use the same data and the same mechanisms also to send push notifications to this. And for a long time, we were very successfully running this with Amazon SNS, a simple notification service. But there were certain things that forced us to reinvent. And so we did the move last year in August to switch the implementation of our notification system to Amazon Pinpoint, which we also call very lovely the emotion transporter, because it's not just about sending a message, it's more about this, which we will cover also in a bit. One aspect of change or reinventing was, one reason for this was personalization. So one of our main company objectives is to make the official Bundesliga app the #1 channel for the so-called matchday experience. And this matchday experience, kind of similar to the general user experience, is a very highly individual construct. So the average Bundesliga fan, what we measure in our data, follows 4 out of 36 Bundesliga clubs. And this creates in the end a huge amount of very individual fan profiles with completely individual interests. So fans follow all around the world, follow and watch Bundesliga matches under completely unique circumstances. So they watch matches from different countries, from different time zones. They have an interest in the Bundesliga because they are a fan of a club or of a certain player, independent of the jersey he wears. So the question for us is, how do we create a user experience that respects and supports each individual fan? And how do we create a user experience that presents the entire spectrum of all clubs and all players within the Bundesliga? And our answer to this is, like in other industries, also personalization. And fans, our fans also demand a stronger and more personalized way of how to follow match. While traditionally they had very limited capabilities of modifying their match day experience by setting the language, setting the clubs they follow or the matches they follow. The top one requested feature in our yearly fan survey was the request for a notification preference setter. So we get a lot of complaints about fans that say, I don't want to get information about cards, I don't want to get information about substitutions and so on. So I want to have fine-grained adjustments of what are the things I'm interested in, what I would like to achieve. So for us, this was really good customer feedback, fan feedback we get, and we saw this also that it helps us to prevent fan churn and increase engagement, because the only option when fans are getting bored is deinstall the app or unsubscribing from a match.
So Christian, so people didn't want to get 3.6 million notifications every game?
No, okay, but not for every position movement is returned in is a notification, but on average we send out, I think, 15 messages notifications per match. So this is huge. And if you see that on average people or fans follow 4 clubs, so 4 times 15 messages, this is a lot. This is a very chatty application. And yeah, what people do is they drop off their phone and start the silent mode or whatever. So it's really a balance of how much is good and when it is enough, basically. Yeah. And the other reason was, so this was the customer or the business case of personalization, and the other reason was more a technical thing. And I like to introduce this with this message, with this image from my daughter. Here we were in a beautiful area in Germany called Eifel, which is a very natural born area. And I always remind in this situation because I had my father-daughter day with her, and this area in Germany is not very good covered with Wi-Fi or mobile signal. And at the same day, my favorite club, FC Cologne, played, and I did not have a good matchday experience because I did not receive any kind of notifications. This was less related to the bad internet connection I had in this area, but more related to a really serious issue we measured in our system, in our notification system. The second event, not related to the screenshot, but underlines the technical problem a bit, was that before every season we have a special match called the Super Cup, where two clubs compete each other, so have some kind of a pre-season event. And I subscribed to this individual match, I would say 30 minutes before the match, and I never got a push notification, which was really concerning because I said, how can this be? So 30 minutes is a long time. Why don't I get even a kickoff message? So we digged a bit deeper into the system and revealed a very serious situation. So we revealed that we have some troubles in our system. So we saw that by looking into CloudWatch and building some dashboards around SMS, that we only had 60% of messages actually successfully delivered, and 40% failed. And we saw also that message deliveries, especially the failed ones, compared to the successfully delivered increased more than during a match. And having then even more deeper analysis using CloudTrail revealed that the root cause was throttling events on the AWS API. So CloudTrail said and revealed us that we had over 3 million throttled events on a whole match day, which is a lot, and was mostly related to two very important API endpoints on SNS, the subscribe endpoint, which was the reason because why I did not get any kind of notification for the Super Cup, and an operation called get endpoint attributes, which resolves certain addresses that are needed for sending out the push notification to the device. So this huge impact on message delivery resulted for us in 40% of lost engagement opportunities during the match. If we look into the past implementation, it's kind of obvious what the problem was. It's tight couplings and insufficient error handling. So this was basically the chain of services that were connected in our previous system. So we had an API gateway that called the Lambda function that directly, without any back pressure, called the subscribe operation on SNS. As an SNS is an awesome service, but it has very strict hard limits. So you only have 100 SNS subscribe and unsubscribe operations per second. So imagine what happens if you have 1,000 Lambda invocations that hammer on the SNS endpoint. You will come very, very soon and hit these limits. And you cannot increase them because it's hard limits. And then there was a very important architecture decision on the previous system that even made this situation a bit worse, because it says that whenever I follow a club in this onboarding screen I showed you, implicitly the fan is the subscriptions are resolved to every 36 resolved matches during the season. So we do have some kind of static subscriptions created, and this results for one user action of one follow club, 36 subscriptions on the SNS API, which is 1/3 of the hard limit. And when 3 fans do this nearly at the same time, it's likely to have a huge impact. My biggest recommendation on what I always transport when showing this slide is also to other teams and people that do that, start with a journey on AWS in the cloud. If you use things like Lambda functions, you have to take care to protect your downstream systems. So this is one of the well-architected best practices. What is often forgotten, in my experience working with teams, is that AWS services and their APIs are also downstream systems that want and need some kind of protection. And this was basically what we not take care of properly, and which resulted then in the issues you saw. And to make it even worse, this was not the only chain, the one chain. We had several integration chains bound in this API gateway. So there was a lot of pressure, even on high peak times during a match day on SNS, which, due to insufficient monitoring, nobody really observed. But it's a good thing that we dig really deep into this analysis and found a solution. One solution was, let's maybe also check other service options we have, not only from derived from this technical issue we had, but also from looking into what kind of things provides us a better personalization, what kind of services enables us to build this preference center, because this was very hard to implement using SNS because it's very static, and topic management can really be a complex thing when your application scales and your fanbase scales. So we looked into Amazon Pinpoint, and we tried also to guide our teams and tell them a bit so that they better understand how both services can be compared or differ from each other. So both are capable to do nearly similar things. They are able to send SMS, short messaging services, emails, and push notifications, of course, but they have different kind of purposes. For me, SNS is categorized in application integration. This is obvious when you look into the catalog of services in AWS, and it's mostly used or typically used in some kind of messaging or decoupling scenarios. So very close to technical use cases, and is in the essence a publish subscribe implementation, if you like. Amazon Pinpoint on the other side is categorized in the area of business applications. And it's more of a bigger suite of service. It's more related to engagement and marketing use cases. So more bigger business use cases. And it's a composition of multiple integration patterns. What one centerpiece and what comes the closest, I think, is a so-called recipient list that gives me dynamic segmentation options and really builds things like newsletter systems, for example. So they have their similarities, but they have completely different purposes and strengths. What you can use those services for. Once I introduced this to have a deeper look into the capabilities of Pinpoint, I got those feedback. Yeah, are we sure? This sounds very slow. This also sounds very expensive. We will also share a bit of how we tackle these questions in the next slide deck. But let me first start a bit on sharing and telling you what would be the first steps when you start using Pinpoint. So for us, the very first step is you need some kind of data. So you need those endpoint informations, you need those device informations. This is the very first important start. So fan and usage data, first party or third party or whatever your context is, needs to be somehow transported and imported into Amazon Pinpoint. But this was the easy part because we had this complete integration into our applications, and we simply had to reroute all the requests to Pinpoint instead of subscribing to an SNS topic. We learned from our system analysis that it would be better to have some back pressure and protect Pinpoint as a downstream system. So we introduced a queue in between, that we have a more controlled load on the Pinpoint API, which it's not comparable like SNS, so it's not 100 subscriptions per second. It has some soft limits, and they are way much bigger. But it's better to be safe and have the queue right up front in there. And we also thought about the letter queue and replay mechanisms. So for us, it's very severe if we would lose something like a push notification token, because at the same time, the device is not reachable for us. So it's again a lost engagement opportunity. So we wanted to have an implementation and strategy that also keeps the data in, that not loses data once, for example, our lambda function between the queue and Pinpoint breaks for any kind of reasons. Once you have so-called endpoints and endpoints in Amazon Pinpoint, I created a projection of your devices. You can start to manage your audience, and you can start to use those endpoints and build segments of them. Segments are basically the audience of fans based on certain criteria. So there are static segments that you can import once and that they will never change again. So therefore they are called static. Or you have the dynamic segments that also change once users decide to change their preferences. So for example, you can build club segments, and when a fan decides, oh, I want to stop following the club and following another instead, these are attribute changes in the endpoints, which then Pinpoint takes care and captures and puts you from one segment into the other. So it's basically a group of fans with a certain interest. And we use this mechanism, and this gives us way much flexibility compared to this previous static topic management solution, because we now can play around and map our fan behavior and our fan segments more precisely and more dynamic with our user journey we have in the app. So for example, the very first segment you create in the onboarding is the language segment. So depending on the operating system language you have, you are put in the English-speaking fans, Spanish or German-speaking fan segment. And once you continue the onboarding, you get put into those buckets of segments depending on your interests and preferences. For example, if you select Bayern Munich as your favorite club, you are in the Bayern Munich fan segment. And this goes down, and we build some kind of inheritance and hierarchy of multiple segments down to the individual match level, and down then also future on the individual notification toggle level, where we have a better understanding of how many fans are interested in certain clubs, how many fans are interested in subscribing to certain matches or even languages. So this gives us a lot of flexibility, and it was also the shift from not thinking just about sending a message, but really thinking about engagement and marketing scenarios and what we can do now to better engage our fans and provide more value to our fans. Creating all these segments is basically an API call, and it's basically a filter criteria on the whole database of endpoints you have in Pinpoint. So, for example, for the language segments, you can say, okay, if language is EN, all English-speaking fans go in there. If favorite clubs contains this club ID, they go into the yellow one, the other one in the red one, and so on. So it's basically just logical conditions you set, and Pinpoint takes care of putting the right endpoint into the right bucket. Creating all those segments, we have more than 4,000 of them. It is not something you do in the console, so it's automated and hooked into the business process also of sports data delivery. So in this case, master data. So whenever we know that a club takes part in a competition, is relegated or promoted, we get this information. We process this in the same way like we process match events, and we create then segments and do the API call on Amazon Pinpoint. We also persist those segments in the DynamoDB table because we have certain, every segment has a certain time to live and a certain life cycle, because the engagement strategy for our content marketing team is to stick with the match schedule in terms of the notifications we send. So right now we are, I think match day 90. We would never send a message related to the match day 1. So we can time out the segments on a very short notice once the match day is over, which makes the resource management in AWS a bit efficient, and also makes the reduces human errors by accidentally selecting the wrong segment in our content marketing department for those notifications a bit. So therefore, we also cached certain metadata about the segments in the DynamoDB table, use the TTL feature to also delete them once they are not needed. Okay, yes, we have now the endpoints. We know about our users and their interests. We have the segments, so we group them together in several buckets. So the only last part of adapting Pinpoint is now giving them messages and sending out notifications. And maybe you remind about that people were a bit afraid of, is this too slow? And we thought a lot about this. What does slow mean, or how fast do we have to be actually? So if you look into traditional and the past way of how we handled notifications, you see something like I show you here. On the let's imagine you watch a match on the big screen, and you have the Bundesliga app as your companion on your mobile device. What you see on the big screen is something like a corner kick situation, I would assume. And in the same situation, when you see this scene on the screen, we send you a nice spoiler in a push notification that says, hey, in let's say 5 seconds, you will see a goal. So the complete match day experience is gone. And in Germany, it's some kind, every time a World Cup or European Championship takes part, my neighbor usually screams 5 seconds before, because he has another distribution latency in the broadcasting signal, which is really annoying because it destroys the complete tension. But it reminds me, okay, to stay focused on the screen. That's the good part, but it destroys literally completely match day experience. So what does it mean for us? What does it mean for focusing on customers, not on technology? It means that the optimal sending and receiving time for push notifications and latency is a highly subjective feeling, and it depends completely on how a fan watches a match actually. So therefore, we have to take real time and latencies always in a given context. But we measured it. We wanted to know, how does our system behave? So we laid down our system and we measured the latencies on every important step. How much does it take for the match data event processing? How much does it take for the handover to Pinpoint? And how much does Pinpoint need to send out a notification to 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 fans? And we saw we got very interesting insights about this. We saw that Pinpoint is not instantly sending out notifications to all fans in a segment, but it takes some time, and there's a certain time span. It can take sometimes 7 seconds, but it can also take up to 45 seconds in the end. So we wanted to know what influences this. We did some data analysis on this, and we put it on the timeline, the behavior of campaigns, so-called campaigns in Pinpoint. What we see was very interesting. So we saw that it takes some time to send out, in this case, it was a kickoff notification on one of our early tests. It takes some time to send out a notification to all fans, and it has a certain ramp up until we get a constant, I would say, a constant notification per second rate of, in this case, let's say 4,000. Fun thing, and I will share this also later in more detail, we saw the same behavior later on SNS. So it's not something typical to Pinpoint. It's the way how those systems behave, have to scale on that those publish subscribe messages behave when they have to scale on a lot of subscriptions. So when we now divide this timeline into certain milestones, we can say, okay, everything below 1 second is ultra low latency, and we have 1 to 5 seconds in the low latency area. And we have this very huge span of, I call it here broadcast latency, which is aligned with the natural broadcast latency you get on, depending on what kind of signal you use, whether you use terrestrial, cable, satellite, or OTT things. You have a natural latency given, so you have some time to really send out those notifications without that people are getting crazy. Okay, why do I get this 5 minutes later? So, and we have then no spoiler area of, let's say, everything above 18 seconds, where when in this area you send a notification, it will never spoil the actual event that you see on the big screen. Our perspective on this was, in the past, the faster, the better. So we were excited if we can say we are in this ultra low latency area. You see here, this is a very low amount of total fans in this segment. And we were a bit concerned if we had this no spoiler area. Interestingly, if you ask your colleagues, friends around you, the perspective of the consumer of the fans is exactly the opposite. So like the situation with my neighbor. So I'm getting annoyed when he has 5 seconds before, because match day experience is gone. I'm happy when it aligns with the broadcasting latency, and it gives me an addition to what I actually see on the big screen. And now having this data and having this conversation gives us a lot of options and opportunities to really see the things from different kind of perspectives. Interestingly, for our fans, the magic and the illusion is still there. So this is actually not that, okay, we got the feedback some days ago, which says, hey, crazy, it's much faster than radio, it's much faster than TV and other sports apps, it's unbelievable. So we keep the illusion a bit. So it's not really, the discussion we had internally about latency and speed is not a big concern of our fans. So they still see the value because they have this latency of the distribution signal on the TV. And like I said, it's nothing typical to Amazon Pinpoint. Rumors say still that since Pinpoint we're getting slower, but what you see here is an export of SNS delivery logs from our past implementation, and you see exactly the same behavior. This is the first screenshot on the top, we see this this behavior of at this peaks exactly like we observed it in Pinpoint. And we see in the middle and the lower screenshot are actually two different devices. The middle one is my device, and the below one is the device of my boss. And he gets the notification 10-15 seconds earlier than me. Did we observe this? No, because we did not stand next to each other and watch on our devices. So it was just looking into the logs, into the data that tells us the story and reveals what's really happening in the system, which is it's really powerful to have a meaningful conversation and really make data-driven decisions instead of just of rumors. But we wanted also to know what influences latency. So how can we influence latency? What are the things we should do or should not do? And we saw that the segment size, of course, has an impact on how long it takes until all fans receive a notification. This is an example of a goal from user Kimmich. It's a player from Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich is one of our biggest fan segments, and we see here that it takes 46 seconds until the complete campaign is finished. Means that all endpoints, that the message is sent to all endpoints actually. We see also that we have a delivery rate of 85%, meaning that 50% of the effort Pinpoint spends in sending notifications was for nothing because the endpoint was not reachable. This can be deactivated devices, deinstall apps, and so on. So endpoint housekeeping and keeping the segment small has a huge impact on how the system behaves at a whole. And to underline this, here an example of a more smaller segment. This was a goal notification from a Bundesliga 2 club, which has not that much fans in the segment, which only takes 26 seconds. Still a long time, but you see exactly what we also measured here in our data, that the smaller the segment is, the less is the campaign duration. We still have issues with the delivery rate, so we are not that good right now in housekeeping of our endpoints and sticking to the life cycle of the app installations. But it's always room for improvement, right? So it's good to have these insights and to know what to do and what not to do. And we can tell a story using the data and go to our departments and have this conversation. A preference center, so giving the fans the option of what kind of notifications they want to receive, also immediately reduces the segments. Because before this, we just broadcasted to every fan every message. Now we send the message just to the fan who is interested in receiving a goal notification or a card, which makes by natural certain segments a bit smaller by giving our fans more control about this. Setting this up in Pinpoint was very easy. So very straightforward. You have an implicit feature of a so-called event stream you can configure in your Pinpoint application that sends all the campaign events using Kinesis Firehose into an S3 bucket. And once you have the data there, you can decide how to analyze them, maybe doing some Athena queries on this, maybe making a beautiful visualization in a quick site dashboards or whatever your system has. Okay, what we learned is a lot today. I hope about the technical implementation. If we put everything on one map, we see that we have some aspects of audience management implemented. So getting fan data, getting first-party data into Pinpoint to model our user and segments. We have this event data processing which we use on the one hand for creating segments on a fan base, on a language base, and so on, but also for sending out campaigns and notifications. And we have then this analytics part of building those dashboards and getting data insights into this behavior of campaign message distribution. let's talk a bit about the impact. So what actually changed after we launched this feature? So a lot. And it's really hard in our business to really get those precise numbers that get those engagement numbers that are not related to a club having historical win. So if a club wins against the biggest competitor, you by naturally get a lot of engagement. So filtering this out is very hard, but combining several aspects, several data into this and using a bit of domain knowledge can give you some insights that might help you on defining hypothesis on what was really the influence of introducing the notification preference center. So what we see, we get a lot of a lot of positive fan feedback and App Store reviews. So we saw after we launched the preference center, the feedback was good, which was not surprising for us because this was one of the most demanded features. And maybe it's a typical habit of German fans, especially. No news are good news, so they are not complaining anymore about those things before. So they are happy and they do not tell us that they miss a feature of deactivating certain notifications type, which is then a good sign, I would say. And on the other side, what is interesting, what we measure is we see after we launched this a trend of decreased deinstallations. It might be the case that fans during the continual evolution of the product of the Bundesliga app are happier and happier anymore. But it might also be that the preference center was a huge part on the start, that people are not forced to deinstall the app because they are not of too many notifications, but still enjoy them, still keep them on their phone and having the control of deactivating things they are not interested in. What we also see is when we speak about this post-match engagement scenario, we send out after the match those digital highlight clips. And before, the only option a fan had was to deinstall the app. This was the very worst part, or unsubscribe from a match, which immediately gives us no opportunity to send him any kind of notifications where once he unsubscribed. So sending a highlight clip after the match has ended was nearly then impossible. We see a trending increase of digital highlight clip consumptions after the start of the preference center. And combined with several other facts, this is getting very interesting on asking ourselves, is the influence related to the preference center? We see, for example, 60% less match unsubscriptions, which is a good sign. So this can be a reason that people are happy with this and do not have to do this force unsubscription. And we see also a 200% increase of match center entries, which is the entry page that is opened when you receive a push notifications. We have to dig a bit deeper into this and really understand better, is this related to the preference center or is this related to the competition in general? Because this is very hard to differentiate in this end. But these are very promising numbers and we observe them very closely to see, does this support us in increasing engagement and preventing fan churn or not? On the technical side, it's very happy to say that using Pinpoint, and there was also the other rumors that say, oh, will this be too expensive? We can now say that we have 25% average cost savings per month. This was basically related to the old implementation that forced us to the static topic management to do some very heavy migration scenarios. And this was crazy. I never seen this before, that we had on 1 month when we did this migration, we spent $2,000 just for CloudTrail, which was extremely, I never experienced this, that somebody spends that much money for CloudTrail in my scale. This is gone because we now have to the segmentation approach, way more flexibility, and we do not have to take care on handling topics and getting rid of all those hard limits in SNS, which is very good. For me, this was also quite a journey on not putting technology in the focus and the center, services and AWS, which are all great, but putting really in the focus on what is important. The fans, the fan behavior, and that we want to create and transport all these emotions, like I showed you in our little time journey at the beginning of this talk. So this was it. A lot of information, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward if you have any questions. If you would like to follow me, here are some links. Kind of active on LinkedIn somehow. Also started my own blog where I want to write a bit on using those services for fan engagement. Yeah, happy to connect with you. Let me stop the screen sharing and be there for some questions if you have them.
So I have a couple of questions. So one is I'm just intrigued by the behavior of people watching the game on TV and yet wanting to get a notification. I mean, I understand not wanting to spoil because my son will watch on some app and there'll be a penalty kick and he says, Dad, Kane's going to score. It's like, well, thank you. but I don't quite understand what's the value if I'm watching the TV and I see that they scored, why do I care that I got a notification they scored? It's like, yeah, I just saw them score.
That's an excellent question. So this is, I think, the next step of driving personalization also in this area. So for me, it makes no sense to send you a push notification of a goal, in my personal opinion, of a goal that I see on the big screen. But you can use this. So having Pinpoint gives you also the options to have some personalized messages. So for example, I can show you more contextual information, things like who made the assist, or what was the expected goal, what was the likeliness of this goal. So something that the Bundesliga match on the TV does not transport. You put this into a push notification, but this requires that we precisely know that a fan watches a match live. So we don't have this information, but we also discussed if our product should form into providing some contextual modes. So maybe asking the fan, hey, do you watch the match live? And then you transform the whole user experience into something that gives you more additional context instead of just showing what you already see there. Yeah.
That makes all kinds of sense because I can see the notifications being really useful for the other game, the game I'm not watching.
Yeah.
And there the real time is softer.
Or if you don't watch, especially internationally wise. So I think in the United States you cannot watch every match. So there sometimes broadcasters decide, or I have a reduced subset of matches they can show. Sometimes your favorite club is in the schedule, but sometimes not. So it's also the value for sending those raw notifications is very important for all the fans who are not able to watch a match live on TV.
Okay. Another question, and I've got several, so if someone else has questions, please message. But so I'm a full disclosure, I'm a Premier League fan, and I have an Alexa skill for Premier League. And one of the things I've been looking at is adding actual emotion indicators based on who you like and who you don't like. So if a team I like scores a goal, yay! If a team I don't like scores a goal, ooh.
Yeah.
I suppose that would just be another bit of personalization and another segment, and maybe you could change the contextual information of, oh no, Leipzig scored, or yay, Leipzig scored.
Yeah. Pinpoint gives you this capabilities out of the box. So Pinpoint has this construct of campaign, and within this campaign you can say what is the message, but you also can say you can define message templates and can inject certain variables into this, replace them with preferences what your fans, for example, have. I think this is for us as a company, as a DFL, this is not a case I think we will implement, because we, and our authority is to be as objective as possible. So keeping those emojis and rivalities out of this. But in the case, if you're a club, you can play around with this if you like, and if this fits your marketing strategy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In Premier League, we don't care about such niceties, and we're right now we're in this terrible position of rooting for Arsenal because we don't want Manchester City to win again, but I'm rooting for Arsenal, and that's crazy making. And the one other point, just for people who are just thinking about Pinpoint in general, your case is sending push notifications to an app. Pinpoint can also send emails, but that's a different sort of real-time thing. And it can also send text messages. And in a previous life, I was trying to do text messages, and the telcos have made the process of Pinpoint sending text messages really hard, really complex. So that's just another whole. Pinpoint can distribute to a bunch of places, and there's different criterion for each of the places it sends to.
Yeah, it covers a lot of use cases and a lot of channels that you can use. It also provides you capabilities to implement custom channels. So if you want to build your WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, or whatever kind of channel you like, it's basically a Lambda function that integrates then against an API that you can also use. It also supports in-app messaging. So you could implement a live ticker with this and send out use Pinpoint for sending messages that you can then display directly in an application in some kind of a card widget or what kind of UI element you have. And the case for SMS compared to the simple notification service or short messages, their Pinpoint is really interesting because it provides those bidirectional SMS. So you can send and you can also receive messages within Pinpoint, which is, during COVID cases, a very big use case for Pinpoint. What I heard from the teams was to have those test results and subscription models using SMS, which SNS, the simple notification service, does not provide, as far as I know, those also receiving notifications. It's just sending out things.
Anybody else have a question?